Hey, this is Roxy, and I am so happy to be in the same room right now with Matt HEAFY from Trivium. How you doing, man?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. I've always wanted to do this acoustic thing with you guys, but it's always on tour, so I'm afraid of doing two sets. I'm not on tour, so it was very, very fun.
Well, we just did it on Facebook, a live Facebook event. Tell us, because I mean, some people probably didn't get a chance to join in. So what did you do exactly?
I did two Trivium songs done very differently. Did Until the World Goes Cold and Dead and Gone. And I like doing the Trivium songs different. I like to sing them an octave lower or change the chords around. Like Dead and Gone is almost entirely different with the chords that are happening in the background, just to make it more interesting, make it something different. And I've done a couple acoustic shows here and there, one in New York years ago, one in Gothenburg, Sweden, and then one at my sister-in-law's wedding, where I played stuff like anything from Nat King Cole to the Righteous Brothers to Roy Orbison to Elvis Presley. But I want to do something more from like my generation of when I was first getting into rock and first getting into like what was being played on the radio, and that was like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and those were the things that I grew up with before I got into metal. So I decided to do Down in a Hole, which was actually Paulo's idea. I was like, hey, I really want to do a cover. I mentioned the bands I was thinking, and he's like, you should do Down in a Hole. And I was like, instantly within a minute of me asking him, he said that song. He's really good with ideas. He's a good idea man, idea machine.
It's interesting because your vocals too are obviously a little bit different when you do one of your songs acoustically. So how have you adjusted to that, and how much practice, I guess, do you have to do in order to do a different rendition?
I've become pretty compulsive with the practicing. I've always been pretty regimented, but I think that practicing has gotten a little out of hand lately, which is, I think it's a good thing for a musician to practice too much. It's 7 days a week now, 1 to 2, 3, 4 hours a day of vocals, at least 30 to 60 minutes of guitar a day. It's kind of at the same time every day. And what I've been doing is trying different warm-up times throughout the day and logging the time in between and when I sing. So I'll do like an hour. I'd test 30, 45, or 60 minutes of vocal warm-ups in the morning or in the afternoon and space out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 9 hours afterwards and see what has the best results of singing. That sounds kind of crazy. So that's what I've been doing on my time off. I've been singing. But with this, I thought of trying it with the original vocal pitch. It sounded a little too aggressive with me singing so high for the Trivium stuff with acoustic, and I've always had more fun singing low. It's just so easy. My voice is super low, so it's just easier for me to sing like Orbison, Johnny Cash stuff. If we sounded like Johnny Cash, it'd be the easiest thing in the world for me, because I can sing low very well. It's just the high stuff I've been working on for the last couple of years. With Down in a Hole, I think thankfully we tune half a step down, and the original's half a step down, so it's the exact same pitch. I just took some of Cantrell's parts for the choruses, for all the choruses instead of Lane's parts, because it's cool. They seem to switch between who does melody and harmony, which is something that Paulo and I do live, but on the record, I'm always doing melody and harmony, and just whatever fits the parts best.
Awesome. You were saying you're a regiment guy, and I know from when you're on the road, for example, you do your yoga, you have meditation time, you have a little bit of and then you find time for jujitsu.
Yep. That jiu-jitsu has become the biggest part of my life outside of music. Music's still first, then probably jiu-jitsu. That's why I've gotten so intensive with my practice schedule, because I had to learn something from the ground up. I remember the first time I ever grappled or sparred or fought, I was against someone who was like probably 60 or 70 pounds lighter than me and was like 17 years old. And I was like, I got this. And he choked me out in like 20 seconds. And I was like, all right, I don't know anything about this at all. And I love that because I like things that are humbling. I like the fact that my entire life, I've been playing guitar and singing in Trivium. I joined the band when I was 12. So to pick something up new that I didn't understand, that was frustrating and weird and difficult and it seemed impossible and still seems impossible some days, it was a metaphor for life, learning jiu-jitsu. And it's about learning about yourself, the habits you have and what you like and how you learn. And I've definitely learned that I'm a very slow learner. That's why for this cover for Down in a Hole, I probably played this like 100 times at my house for the last like week or so, and it's the only thing I've been listening to. I listened to it on the flight, every time I took a shower, anytime. I just had it playing to make sure it's right. I'm not overly a perfectionist. I guess that practice schedule sounds like it is, but I always want to have the idea of perfection in mind and work towards that, knowing that you'll never actually get perfection, which is kind of a existential sounding thing.
It's funny. Down in a Hole, it's always been my favorite Alice in Chains song. And when I saw the band do it, with William as the front man. They played the Bowery Ballroom in New York, very small room. And I got all choked up and started crying. It just struck me, because with Lane, just such a sad story.
Really is.
Really sad.
And it's amazing to think of the greats that we could still have around. Like, what would that be like? And it'd be pretty amazing, because with all these like reunitings of bands happening right now,
Yes, I agree. Talk about jiu-jitsu for a minute. How old were you when you first discovered it?
I think the first time I ever was introduced to it, I was really young. I was probably somewhere between 8 and 10. My dad would take me to like the UFC pay-per-view parties he'd have with his dude friends, where they drink beer and like grill meat and watch dudes beating each other up. And that was my first introduction. Seeing the grappling stuff, seeing that there was a guy in a gi fighting a guy in like wrestling shorts, and it didn't quite click what that was. Later on in my life, we toured Brazil for the first time, and I toured there and loved it so much. I said to myself that I want to do what Brazilians do, and it was either soccer or jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu sounded like the harder thing to me, and I like to pick the harder things. Like when I first started cooking, the first thing I wanted to make was Anthony Bourdain's recipe for demi-glace, which took like 2 days to make it. So I like to do difficult things first. When we were recording Vengeance Falls as well, at David's house, we'd watch UFC a lot. So that kind of reminded me of my childhood a little bit. And he would describe actually what was happening like in the grappling stuff, because I didn't understand it at all. And he would talk about positions or what people are looking for. Then I decided I wanted to do it. And I asked Zoltan from Five Finger Death Punch, I was like, hey, I know you do jiu-jitsu. Where should I go in Orlando? And he said Gracie Barra, Orlando. I joined there pretty much right away. I've been going there for 3.5 years now. And what I like about jiu-jitsu is it takes a while to like achieve things, and I'm not in it for achieving a black belt. That's something that in jiu-jitsu takes 8 to 10 years to achieve. In other martial arts, it takes 2 to 3 years to get the black belt. So that's something I liked, the idea that it takes a longer time, takes more work to go into. For me, it's become something that's a physical benefit. I find that it's the same as working out, running, seeing a shrink. It's the most pacifying thing on my mind that I've ever had, and it's something that whether placebo or not, I need it on a show day. I have to do jiu-jitsu on a show day, and I have to move things around. Like there's certain submissions we can't do on tour, like wrist locks. It's dangerous for a guitar player. There's a choke called the Ezekiel choke, where you put your hand in your own gi while you have their head in between here, and you drop your knuckles like on their throat here. That one messes up singing, and I found that out firsthand when I was training with someone else from another school. They came out and they kept Ezekiel-ing me. And then that night I had a really hard time singing. So we just avoid those two. Everything else is fine. And right now, like I have to keep my foot extended because I had my ankle popped a month ago, and it's still a little rough. So you have little things like that. But what's cool is you learn not to work through it, but to work around it. When I hurt my ankle, I realized, all right, well, I should avoid this position, and work this stuff. And it became the same thing as a metaphor for working guitar. When you know you're good at certain things, you have a tendency to keep playing those and keep playing the same things on guitar. And I said, I'm not good at these. I need to work at this and spend this much time a day, this much time a week to work at that. So it's reignited my will to strive for perfection while knowing perfection is impossible.
So I guess it's a goal to, when you're putting a tour together, to try to find someone who also is into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I've been teaching the guy that was our tour manager for several years. I was teaching him for about 3 years. So he was my partner, and he doesn't belong to a gym, so we're both white belts. And what we always joke, as anybody that does jiu-jitsu will know as well, white belt versus white belt is the scariest thing in the world. It's two guys that don't really know what they're doing, so people are definitely going to get hurt. But when it's like a white belt working with a higher belt, you're not going to get hurt from the higher belt. So the more experience, the less chance of stupid injury. But Joey and I would always have stupid injuries when we started. For the next tour we're doing, he's out with another band, but one of my good friends who's a pro fighter, his name's Andre Tiva. He actually fights on the 27th for a professional fight in Minneapolis, which unfortunately I can't be at. He's head of security on our next tour, and he also does jiu-jitsu and striking and MMA. So he'll be security and coach.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So that next tour is coming up this fall, and why don't you tell us who you're going out with?
We're bringing out Sabaton, who is one of my favorite bands, and I'm so happy that we're able to bring them out. They're an arena band pretty much everywhere in Europe. They've become massive. They're a really great band, good people. We finally got to meet all of them on the last run we did when we played Download Paris. Really good guys. We're also bringing out Huntress, who we've all been fans of for a long time. So it's cool to be able to bring out two bands we're big fans of. And ever since the song Silence in the Snow came out, I've been seeing Sabaton shirts in our crowd of every single country in the world, whether it's been Mexico or Australia or Japan or somewhere in the States. As soon as that song came out, Sabaton fans started coming out. So I figured it's a sign that we should probably be touring together.
So you mentioned you'd done the festivals in the spring in Europe. And I guess Download in Paris was really the first kind of big rock show since, the Bataclan incident.
Yep.
What was it like, as an artist, working there? I mean, how were things different?
That day was particularly difficult for us in the band. We woke up that day. I went in the dressing room. I was kind of getting ready for the day, and like a bomb-sniffing dog comes in, checks out the dressing room, and leaves. And I look on my phone and check the news, and we'll backtrack and then come back to right here. So when the Bataclan shooting happened, we were in Orlando. The merch guy that was killed at the show was actually a merch guy of ours for years, Nick, and he was a really good guy. The morning of the Download Paris show, the Orlando shooting happened at Club Pulse the exact same day. So when I was in Paris, the Orlando shooting happened. When I was in Orlando, the Paris shooting happened. And it was very difficult for me, and it was ironic as well because a lot of my family was so worried about me, particularly being in Paris. And you'd never think, of all places, Orlando, Florida would have a shooting the night before with Christina Grimmie, and then the next day at Pulse, and then the next day a kid gets eaten by a gator. It's like Florida is pretty insane with all the stories that have been happening lately. But so it was a very difficult day for us, and we were down, and we were trying to think of any way we could help. So we got 3 of our guitars and started having every band for every festival sign them, and we just charity raffled them with JRR back home. It was Dickerman at JRR is actually a brown belt in jiu-jitsu at the same school I go to as well. So he helped out with that, and we were able to raise almost $10,000 for that. So we sent that in. So that helped a bit. When we played that show that day, I told the crowd the story. I was like, this is a very difficult, and it's like 60,000 people. I was like, this is a very difficult day for us because, as you know, Orlando just had a shooting back home. And I told them that we were with you guys for the Bataclan shooting. And I said that this is proof that nothing will ever stop all of us from doing what we love. So that was really great to have that. And a week later, we're in Brussels, and Brussels also had attacks. And when we're in the center of Brussels, and it actually gives me chills thinking about it, I saw they had a big Orlando monument in the city. So that was really cool. Took photos of that. And when we played Grass Pop the next day, I told them, I was like, thank you guys for your support. We were with you guys as well. And it's weird to have to make that same speech, but it's also a good thing because it was the highest attendance Grass Pop had ever had. And Download Paris, that was the first year, and it was sold out. So it's showing that people aren't afraid of doing what they love. And we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be afraid to go out and do things and do as we do, because that's what the extreme minority that we're afraid of wants to do. And it's not working.
Now, the Silence in the Snow has been out, is it a year and a half? Could it be that long?
Something like that. Okay, so how long has it been out?
Just over a
Yeah, I
year.
never know. It feels like it just came out.
I mean, I was going to say, it's felt longer to me. But anyway, are you at the point yet where you guys are starting to think about writing new music, or have you been writing anything?
We haven't really discussed it too much yet, but we know this is probably going to be the last North American tour, so people definitely going to get out to it. And I think that once the cycle's done and we take some time, then we could probably start talking about it again. It is pretty nuts to think that we have 7 records out now. Yeah. And it's funny. I heard an interesting story because when we first came out, everyone called us, they're that young band, they're that kid band, the teenager band. And I won't say state or city, but there was a station one of our good friends was working to get us played at, and the guy was like, those guys, haven't those guys been around since like the 70s or 80s? Those guys are like super old now. Why would I play them? And we're like, what the heck happened? It's like a lot of the young bands now, we're the same age as them. We just started really young, and it's an interesting shift. Yeah, it's funny.
I remember meeting you for the first time at that Oz. I guess it was an Ozfest.
Yeah, we were young then, 18 then.
I remember you had really long hair. All right, so we've established that you haven't started writing new music yet, and the cycle is just about over, touring behind this record. So what do you like to do other than jiu-jitsu?
And eating food.
And right, I wanted to get to the eating food part. So give us some recipes maybe that you've discovered lately.
Man, well, I guess that makes me think one of the favorite things that I always love to do on tour is go places that, like, I haven't been with my wife before, she wasn't with me, and then I like to figure out the recipe of that and recreate that at home, whether it's complex or simple. Complex would be, I went to a restaurant called Chin Chin in Melbourne, Australia, which I consider it's our favorite restaurant in the world. It's like Southeast Asian Thai, and the main chef there, Benjamin, he's become like a mentor to me. He was talking about this book he was reading called, I think it was called like Octophilosophy, and it was based on chefs, like what are the ingredients that makes a chef who that person is. And he encouraged me to apply that to our band. Look at the ingredients of what each of us in the band, like words, what each of us think trivium means. 5 words for each of us, and a set of songs that we feel like defines us. And we'd never done anything like that. So we all sat together and said, this is what I think the band is. So it's cool that I have a friend like that can help inspire me for that. So I loved the place so much. I bought the cookbook that night, the first time I was there. I recreated it at home, and it took about 3 days to make 2 of the dishes there. So I don't know how they do it. I think they have like a couple thousand people every single night, and the kitchen is just as big as this room. I don't know how they do that. So next time you're in Melbourne, definitely go there. So as difficult as that, but then also like I went to South Africa for the first time, and South African pizza is feta, avocado, and biltong, which is like, I forgot what animal jerky it is. It's some indigenous African animal there that looks like a deer, but it's not. So I recreated that at home as well with my wife Ashley, and we like to find things that we've had around the world and recreate, whether we've been there together or not. Yeah.
Probably an eland, I'm thinking.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, so they'll make jerky out of each of those things, but we kind of changed it to our own thing recently: feta, avocado, and eggs. Like I like baked eggs on everything. Yeah, burgers, ramen, anything.
Well, I always thank you for your time. You're a very special person to us, and we
Thank you so
always
much.
enjoy when you come by. So
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you guys.
Previous bands before, and I think that's what I got to meet Padge, and I done a few like recording sessions in his home studio, and but with my previous band it didn't work out, so I had to get a day job working in a car shop in Cardiff.
Because when you get 3, 4 very strong-willed, strong-minded, creative individuals in the same room together, it can make for an occasional bout of fireworks from time to time. But I'll tell you, my favorite part, I would have to say, of the whole process of making this record was us realizing, once again, that there is nothing that can compare to the chemistry that we have when we are writing face to face with each other.